Well, welcome to Innovation Guelph Presents Toolkit Tuesday. Today's session is called The Art of Pitching with Melissa Durrell. You have 5 seconds. How do you capture the attention of investors or potential stakeholders? The most successful pitches are those that, while rehearsed, do not sound like they're rehearsed. First and foremost, pitching is storytelling. People need to hear how it is a good idea. They need to feel it too. And there's a science behind the pitch. So today, Melissa is going to be breaking it down and showing you the hacks and pitfalls and teach you how to accordion your pitch to fit any time slot. Before I introduce our speaker today, I just have a little bit of housekeeping. Today's session will be recorded and posted publicly on Innovation Guelph's YouTube channel. And we ask that you turn off your mics for the presentation. And if you have any questions, you can text them in the chat box below. And Jordan will be monitoring the conversation and will pose your questions to Melissa when it's a good time to jump in, or at the end during the 30 minutes of questions and answers. So to experience today's presentation in American Sign Language, please pin or spotlight the presenter, Melissa, and both the interpreters, Jennifer and Jeanette, to the top of your gallery. In addition, anyone in the session today can access the Zoom closed caption function by clicking on the closed caption option on the bottom of your screen. Just in case someone here doesn't know who I am Mickey Campo. I'm a program manager at Innovation Guelph, and I'm really happy that you decided to join us today. I'd like to take a moment to thank our corporate sponsors, Ernst & Young, ISU Software Corps, Morexis, Miller Thompson, OKR Financial, Reese Informatica, Invest in Guelph and BDO, and we are so very grateful for all of their generosity and support in everything that we do. So in addition, Sign Language Interpreting Associates of Ottawa, we thank you for providing the ASL interpretation at these Toolkit Tuesday events. Thank you. So quickly, before I hand off the screen to Melissa, I'd like to briefly introduce Innovation Guelph to you as well. So as many of you on the call today might be familiar with either me or what Innovation Guelph does. Many of you are clients and mentors, partners and supporters. There are quite a few of you on the call today that may not know too much about us. So quickly, Innovation Guelph is one of 17 regional innovation centers in Ontario. And while we're located in Guelph, we serve the entire region of Southern Ontario, and we have one national program. So what that means is we have clients all throughout the region, but also all the way from BC to Nova Scotia. We work with our clients, supporting them through multiple stages of business growth, and all the way from the startup stage to scalable enterprises. Lots of programs, workshops, and even a big trade show coming this October called the Innovation Expo. Stay tuned to social media for any kind of update from Innovation Guelph. I won't take any more of your time right now. I know you're all here to see and hear Melissa. So let me introduce you quickly to her. Today's session will be presented by pitch coach extraordinaire, Melissa Durrell. Melissa is actively involved in the global startup scene. She works with entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, angel investors. She's one of Canada's few female pitch coaches, and she's known for her unique storytelling skills. She's owned her former career as an award-winning Canadian broadcast journalist, and during her time at Communitech Hyperdrive, now Rev, she's successfully worked with dozens of CEOs as they developed their pitch running up to the demo day. She's currently an investor pitch coach with Innovation Guelph and the Accelerator Center, and she's worked with founders to successfully raise more than $100 million in the past several years. So we're definitely in good hands today. Melissa has lots to teach us, coach us on, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what's happening in life right now. So Melissa, I will pass things over to you. Thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure, Mickey. And I actually need to update that. I'm close to 500 million now that I've helped companies raise. So that number's got to go up. I know. And it's one of my favorite things is working with amazing entrepreneurs who have brilliant ideas And in order to get to that next level of scalability, they're looking to give up some equity in their company through an investment round. Oftentimes I'm working mostly in the angel investment space, as Mickey mentioned, but I'm also an angel investor myself. So I've been known to dip my own checkbook into a company when I really, really love them. Okay, so we've got a great day planned for you here. And Mickey, I'll just wait for you to get over. We don't need to see. Yeah, we can keep going one more through. Yeah, this was basically one of the reasons that I started doing this. There weren't really any pitch coaches in Canada about 15 years ago. And it was basically, Communitech and Innovation Guelph and a couple of the successful accelerators around town were saying, we've got all these great startups, really smart people, but they can't talk. They don't know how to talk about their idea. And so like, I think about all of you on this call here today, watching this webinar. How many times have you started to get up to think, I'm so excited to present my company and my idea, and you could talk for an hour, or you could talk for 2 hours. Some of you could probably talk for even longer than that. And so what I'm here to tell you is there's a lot of information that you can give to people. What we're going to talk about today is letting the cream rise to the top. We only want to take the best of the information. The rest of it is a lot of inside baseball, if I could use an old sports term for you. All right, let's hit that next slide. So one of my favorite pitch stories comes from a company called Views IQ, and they were an innovative medical technology company, and it was led by a guy named Herman Lowe. Now, if you want to just hit play, you can get a better idea of what the company was doing. So Herman and his company had a great idea. He came up with a way to send a picture of a person's blood sample to a doctor virtually in high enough quality that it could actually be diagnosed virtually then and there. Now, there's only a few doctors that actually read the blood samples that they were taking. And so Herman knew that hospitals were spending millions of dollars a year sending blood samples to be read through a microscope. So he knew that this was an very inefficient way to run this, and that his product could solve a big problem, right? How many of you guys are in a situation where you were looking around and you saw a problem that needed to be solved, and nobody else has come forward with a better solution than yours, right? So that's where Herman was. So he created the technology behind it. And basically when we were talking in a very similar situation to where we all are today, I was working with him on his pitch. I was telling him the elements that needed to be in it. We were putting together a little bit of an investor strategy. And so as we were talking about, we knew that he was changing the time frame in which blood samples were going to be viewed by simplifying the process for doctors. But he was missing something. And let's just hit that next slide if you wouldn't mind. He was missing baby Sarah. And baby Sarah was rushed into a hospital. Oh, sorry, Mickey, if we could just hit that next slide, that'd be awesome. There we go. So baby Sarah got rushed into a hospital in northern British Columbia that happened to be pilot testing the Views IQ technology. Within seconds, her blood sample was read by a doctor in a Vancouver hospital, and baby Sarah is alive today because of Views IQ technology. So we took a step back and we started to tell this story, a life-saving technology story. So I want all of you to put on your founders hats right now and think about your own company and think of a story, some way that you've helped society, some way that your product is changing lives, whether it's as simple as saving time or saving money, or actually, something even greater. So what is that big problem that you're solving, and how are you getting through those roadblocks that are thrown up in front of all of us? So think about those ideas, and we're just going to move on to the next part, please. So whenever I talk to anybody, any founders, the first thing I say is, I'm going to give you a ton of information. In fact, there's awesome mentors at Innovation Guelph and the other places that I work, and they love to give information out. These are great ideas. This is what you should do. So I'm going to give you a ton of ideas over the next 60 minutes. But here is the one thing I want you to remember is nobody knows your product or service better than you. So do a gut check. Don't do something because a mentor or someone tells you to do it. Do it because you know it's the right thing for your company, okay? All right, there, that's over with. Now let's get into the big ideas. Next slide, please. So one of the most compelling elements in a pitch, or anytime you're doing a sales talk, or you're meeting with channel partners or anything along those lines, is you're telling the story of your company. Now, what's really interesting is oftentimes we get this wrong. We think the company is the hero. But what I really want you to think about is how your customer is the hero and you are actually the person, your company is actually helping them on their journey, right? You're the Sherpa. You're helping your customer through the problems and taking them to the solution that you've come up with. And how do we do that? Well, we do that through storytelling. And so, it's funny because I ask people, people say to me, like, what does a story have to do with a business? Well, investors will often say, let's get to the point, but really your story is how you engage with them. It is a fact that an investor's brain will take 5 seconds to decide whether they are interested in what you're doing or not. Like 5 seconds isn't a lot of time. It just passed. So what are we going to say right off the top that's going to grab their attention, right? And a story is an awesome way. We make decisions based on emotions and then facts to back up those decisions. So always when we're thinking about presenting to people, we want to be coming with the story that's emotional, that's going to attach to them, and then we back it up with facts. So all the mathematicians and the engineers that are listening to this right now, I need you to flip your brain to that more emotional side. You get to use your facts and the science. That's really important, but we're going to lead with the story. Next slide, please. So your story really it's got to be compelling. It needs to be interesting. It needs to be scripted. So and I'm going to make that point again, it needs to be scripted, because for people who just decide they're going to put together a quick pitch and they put it into PowerPoint, oftentimes you never do you never do your pitch the same way. So it's really difficult to add in those elements. Like, when we go from a 3-minute pitch to a 5-minute pitch to a 12-minute pitch, there are elements that we need to have in each one of those. So creating a script allows you to accordion in and out. And I'll get more into that in a second here. We got to think of what's that hook? What's that 5-second grabber that's going to get people's attention and essentially want them to know more. As Mickey mentioned, I was a journalist for many, many years, and we used to call it, so what's the headline, right? So what's the headline that we're putting forward about our company? And then finally, we really want people to think, I want to know more, right? So how are we going to get them to that point where they're going to want to ask more questions? They're going to want to deep dive into what your company is. Most importantly, what we want them to do is to say, how can we help? We want them to get involved with what you're doing. So one of the things that I often say to founders is, because they're like, I don't know what my story is and I'm having trouble, like where do I start? So the next couple of slides I'm going to walk you through are just ideas to put into your head, seeding ideas for you to think about what your story is. So I'll run through, these are the typical kinds of pitches that are out there. And from there you can say, yeah, I align with this, because every single person has a different company that they're running on this call right now. And they have a different target audience, a different market. All of those things are going to be different about each one of you. So I'm going to bring you through a whole bunch of different ideas of what your pitch can be. And I want you to be thinking about which one you align with. Let's go to the first slide, which is the disruptor pitch. And this is very much a tech pitch, right? We got good old Travis sitting there looking like he's got the world. Anyway, I'll stop there. Okay, so what we're talking about with the disruptor is that your product or service is actually going to change the landscape of your industry. Now, we throw the term disruptor around, like we throw the term innovation around. So, be really careful that if you are truly disrupting, it means that you are changing your industry. What you are doing is going to make waves, right? Exactly like Uber. Uber changed the way that we moved around. And so do you align with that? The taxi business hadn't been disrupted in years and years and years. Uber showed up and threw it all into whack, right? Out of whack. So think about that. If you're a disruptor, you at the pitch, you're going to begin with the problem you're solving. And a big part of that problem is that the current industry doesn't have a solution to the problem that exists. Okay, so you got that in there. Okay, next slide. So then there's the founder slide. And now this is a tough one. Like, I mean, I've got Emily up here. She truly is a disruptor. You know, if there's any women on the call here who like the glossier, you know, it's a beauty ecosystem, all those things. But what was important about Emily was this wasn't her first rodeo. Okay. She had started several businesses before this. It's just like, you know, when like a Travis from Uber, I wouldn't go with Mark Zuckerberg, but you know, even Jack Dorsey from Twitter, all he has to do is put his name on a company and say, I'm going to be, you know, I'm one of the co-founders of it, and he's going to get investment. People believe that he is the right founder to bring a company from a seed idea to scale. So this is a special person. And I'm not sure how many of the founders are on this, but if you've had successful companies in the past, you can tell your founder story, because what essentially you're doing here is you're saying, I got the chops to be able to back up this idea and take it to market. Now, in an investment pitch, the founder story is, I mean, this is unique. I don't see many of these founder stories in pitches, and I see a lot of pitches. So if you're doing the founder story, you need to be sure that this is the right one for you. And also to that, if you have a good story and it's not strong enough to be a founder pitch, make sure that your team slide has a really good founder story in it. And your team slide is usually like, you know, comes to at the end of your slide deck. So you might want to move it up underneath your company slide so that you can pump up your founder story. Let's hit the next one. This is a little tongue in cheek here in the dream team. So essentially, if you're a founder and you've got a whole bunch of founders that are making up a team, then you're going to want to call it the dream team. And this is my team. I love them so much. They're amazing. But essentially what you want to show here is that you've got a group of people that have a complementary skill set. And as I mentioned before, oftentimes this comes on the team slide. You want to move this up. Let's say probably shouldn't be my team on here, but it could be the PayPal Mafia, with Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and those people in it. Let's hit the next slide. Now, this is one of the more interesting pitch ideas, and we call this the detective pitch. And the idea behind this is like, you're into the Internet of Things, you're into big data. Your pitch is you're taking very complex processes and you're simplifying them. And you're doing this so that your market can make better informed decisions. So if your company is playing in that space, then you might want to have a detective pitch. Now, the interesting thing I would say for a detective pitch is oftentimes it's almost like a double problem, because you have to say, here's the problem our industry is having. And then because your industry is, if we're talking about big data, cryptocurrency, like some of the big ideas, and then you're working within that space, you might have a 2-problem slide. You have to introduce the industry problem, and then you introduce the problem you're solving within that little slice of pie within that industry. So a detective pitch might have 2 problems because you're digging deeper, just like a detective, and then you come out with your solution. So just a note on that one. Next slide, please, which is the Emancipator Pitch. Now, the idea behind Emancipator Pitch is you're liberating people by automating mundane tasks. So when we lived through COVID over the last 16 months, do you know how many Emancipator pitches I looked at? Like the technology and the ideas coming out of COVID to, make shopping easier, making deliveries easier, like all of those things. Those are all the things you're helping people by making their lives a little bit better. So, I've got to have a little Greta on here, because doesn't she make all of our lives a little better by bringing climate change to the forefront? So, what we're doing here is we're showcasing and we're giving people the way. We're leading them the right way to help make their lives a little bit more efficient, a little bit easier. Next slide, please. Now the slide, this one is the one that wins every single pitch competition that I'm ever in. So if you've got a perfect world company, well done. So this perfect world company is a company that's solving a truly massive problem. So if you are in environmental, if you are like education, healthcare, like a lot of these good ideas that are coming into companies fall into that perfect world. You're making the world a better place, right? You're looking at a picture here from a company called Roots Hydrogels, and they created 100% biodegradable sugar-based hydrogels, which provided a controlled release of water and active ingredients. Why that matters is they were trying to solve the drought problem in the world. like big problem. And so that is one of the ideas that you want to have. So you want to set it up, and in a perfect world, you have a strong problem, right? It's a problem that everyone can understand. So oftentimes I'll coach people to have 3 problems that you might be looking at. Time, money, quality, technology. Like there's all sorts of problems that you're helping solve. In a perfect world pitch, it just might truly be like you could have one epic problem you're solving, and then you move it forward into your solution. So just little things to think about as you're starting to put that story into your mind. Okay, and now I'm going to move on here, but I hope I've helped all of you just get a little bit of an idea of what that looks like. So then, okay, so we've got our idea of what the story arc can be. So the next part we want to move on to is the elements of our story. So our main character is basically our major persona, our number 1 target audience. And so we want to tell them how our service is going to help them. Now, many of the founders I've worked with, because they're predominantly in tech, tend to be engineers and mathematicians and scientists. So they don't take a lot of English classes. So this is a really bare tax idea of what a story arc is. You basically, this is how I want your pitch to feel. So you bring your audience up, and then you give them a bit more information. You bring them up to that next level. These could all be considered aha moments, good information that we're giving them. And then all the way to the top, which is basically what we're asking for, which is our, your ask will help us succeed to do this. That's the pivotal part. I always love to see a little bit of vision at the very end of your pitch as well. So talk about, you need this money to get to this point, but the big vision of your company is this. I always like to end with a little bit of sizzle, so it gives them something to think about, gets them to come back to ask more questions or be interested in what we're saying, okay? So that's sort of what, if we were gonna map out what your pitch looks like on paper, I want you to be thinking about that as we go to start to write. Next slide, please. So really the other part of this too is, you want to have those hooky elements. So I always think about, and I use this quite a bit because it's called bookending. And if you're essentially, you've got the meat of your pitch, and then we're sandwiching it between 2 ideas. So oftentimes I have founders say to me, I don't know how to end. And I always say, how did you start? So if you're struggling with what the end of your pitch looks like, take a look at how you started it. Did you leave a story that was open that you can finish it? Here's an example. There's a company, and I know that the founders, Caitlin, is a big fan of Innovation Guelph, and I believe she's been a keynote at several of your events. This is Caitlin's company. It's called Plum. And essentially, she ate her own dog food. They had built an algorithm that helped people sift through hundreds of resumes. And really what it did was they answered some questions, and they were trying to align with people to see who would be the best culture fit. Now, this helps with so many things around equity and equality. Like, as a female business leader, these are the kind of companies I like to get behind. Anyway, so at the beginning of their pitch, they ate their own dog food. So they had all 100 people who put in their resumes, and Joel and Christine scored the very highest on the Plum test. Now, Joel didn't score very high on it, but if they were going to do it the old way, Joel had the best resume. He's got an MBA, he had a little bit of experience for the role that they were looking for. So on paper, Joel would be the typical guy that they would hire. Christine had a fine arts degree. At the time, she was working in an art gallery. But she scored the best. So fast forward to the next slide. And what we did was we moved it to the very end of her team slide. And what we found out was, hey, Joel spent way too much time playing fantasy football and wasn't getting the job done. Christine elevated herself within the company to the point that the CEO went on a maternity leave, and Christine stepped in to run the company for the next 6 to 9 months. So they not only did they eat their own dog food, they proved that the problem they were solving worked, and that it worked so well they actually did it within their own company. So we bookended at the end. So they started with this problem, and then when we got to the team slide, which is near the end of the deck, we showed that Christine was now the acting CEO. Cool, huh? So always look at ways that you can bookend, and you can bookend with stories, you can bookend with big ideas, you can bookend with the vision of your company. Next slide, please. So the next thing we want to talk about is the actual deck. So get out your pens and papers, people, because this is the meat of the presentation. So there's a couple of different elements. And one of the things I wanted to really bang home today is that depending where you are and who you're pitching to, the timing of your pitch is very different. So there's the 3-minute pitch, the 5-minute pitch, which is super British at this point. And in Canada and even in the States, the VCs, they want a 12-minute pitch. All the angel groups in Ontario are expecting a 12-minute pitch. So here's how I'm going to set this up. Now, if you're doing a 3 or 5-minute pitch, you're spending most of your time on the substance, which is basically we're trying to get some interest here. So I always like to say, let's start off by setting the scene. Now, this goes back to my old journalism days where, I'd show up and there's an apartment building on fire or a building on fire. And the first thing we do is say, this is a 7-alarm fire. We've been told that nearly all of the people have been removed from the building. They're out in their pajamas all along this, we're at King and Herb. So what am I doing here? I'm setting the scene. I'm saying the location. I'm giving people valuable information they need in order to make decisions as more information comes out. Your pitch is kind of the same thing. Like, think about if you were an investor, put your angel hat on for a second. They're typically seeing, between 6 to 10 pitches in 24 hours, in a 24-hour day or maybe 2 days. If they are looking to invest, they're actually, they're getting the pitches going. So if you show up and the first thing that you get into is, hi, my name's Melissa and this is my company, and then I jump right into the problem, well, I've just totally lost them on the 5 seconds. I've named the company and I've told them I've named the company and I've named who I am, but I haven't given them anything else that's going to interest them. So tease them. Is this a $1 billion market? Are we disrupting an industry that hasn't been disrupted in 200 years? Is this your 6th startup? Your 6th successful startup and 3 of them, were acquired. Like, use the best information you have to tantalize them. We currently have, we are currently on the shelves of 400 premium grocery stores. Like, try to look at, when I was a reporter, one of my news directors would say, how would you tell your grandma the story? Because you tell your grandma the first thing that comes to your mind, which is the most exciting thing, right? So put yourself in that situation. What's the most exciting thing that you can just verbally jump out of your mouth? Now that is likely going to be your intro. So set the scene, set it up, make it sexy. This is the company. This is the industry that we're in. My name's Melissa. Buckle up. We're in for a ride, right? And then you can get into the problem. So there we go. We transition. And as I said, there's the rule of 3, we've got morning, noon, and night. Like, there's 3 of everything, right? So nature's already given us the rules of 3. We can use this in our, when we do our writing styles as well. So oftentimes we'll look for 3 problems. You need to make sure that each problem is backed up by a statistic. It's not something you heard word of mouth or someone told you anecdotally. Like, these problems need to be substantiated with statistics, etc. So this is a great place for you to sort of lay out, here's what my industry looks like right now. And when I say my industry, it's the industry that your company is in. Here's what my industry looks like. Here's the problem that it's having. And then we transition to the opportunity, right? So this is a great place to insert your story. And, problem and pain and opportunity, you can kind of flip those back and forth depending on how you need to set it up. This is not prescriptive. I always say, learn the rules and then break them. So I'm setting out the rules right now, but feel free to break them. Okay, so we get into the pain and opportunity. The opportunity is this is where we go back to your main character. They are looking for something. They've got a problem and they are looking for a solution. It's your opportunity to give it to them. So we start to meld that story together, which seamlessly, like butter, flows into your solution. And so what we want to remember is if we've set up 3 succinct problems, when we come to that solution slide, we need to address how your company in your product or service is addressing those current problems that we set up. So what is your solution to those 3 problems? So, and, I don't want it to be, like we said, the problem is price. our price is better. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying, like, we are competitively priced, get your marketing director with you as you're writing this out. Use some of your key messages in your language. Don't be too salesy, because essentially when we're doing an investor pitch, we're selling the company, not the product. So make sure we're focused on the solution the company is bringing to market. Then we go to the company, which is basically an overview. And this is your opportunity to take off your ego and showcase what you got going on. So what sort of traction have you had? Do you have exceptional channel partners you've got? How many MOUs have you got signed? What success have you had so far? Have you hit $100,000 in revenue in a record time? Are you growing at 20% year over year? Like, find your best stuff and put that in the company, right? So here's our company. And this is like, I love Oprah. So this is we want to show the solution and the company that's doing it. We want to show our traction here. Then we transition to your unique value proposition. Now, this is interesting because I feel like sometimes people get your unique value proposition isn't a whole bunch of things. It's really, why are you different from the competition? And I'd like to double up on this slide with trends. So why now is oftentimes somebody, like I've actually seen people write why now on their slides. Don't do that. What you're showing with why now is that you see the trends that are happening, right? So if you're coming up with sort of a PPE solution 16 months after the pandemic has happened, why now is not the right thing for you. You are not running on that trend. However, if you are creating a company that's helping other companies get back to marketing, whatever that might be, you are riding the trend. We are about to hit the roaring 20s, baby. So what we want is for people to be excited. There's there's economic trends that are happening. There's cultural trends that are happening. Look at the trends that are out there and see if you can attach yourself to one. Because essentially the why now is prompting you as the founder to say, why today can I start this company? Why couldn't I have done it 5 years ago? Oftentimes with really techie companies, the technology didn't exist until today. Peloton couldn't have existed 5 years ago because we couldn't figure out how to run video simultaneously without lag. We figured that out, and now we've got Peloton. Thank the Lord. But back to your pitch. Why is now the right time for your company to hit the market? And I want you to attach it to trends. Now, going back to how I began this slide, if you're doing a 3-minute pitch, this is essentially what you want to be looking at. You want to intro it, really sexy, tease it up. Then you want to get into your problem. You want to have a bit of a story there. If we can link that in, you're going to get to your solution slide, a little bit about your company. If you're doing a 3-minute slide deck, you could probably include company and team together, especially if you've got a kick butt team with like a founder or a dream team connected with it. So you've got that company team, so you've got all that in. And then your unique value proposition or your why now is really showing I might move that to be maybe a little bit of tempting the competition, just so you've got a little bit more beef. So I'm sure all of you are looking at me right now going, what about the numbers? We haven't talked about numbers. You're right. Mickey, let's go to the next slide. So we've got interest at the top of our slide deck. And now we're going to move to the next set of the slide deck, which is really the numbers. So investors love numbers, but we're going to tempt them with the story, and then we're going to give them the facts of our numbers on the end. So as you can see, I've jammed a lot in here, and there's, we can pull things out, whatever makes sense to you. So market size is an important one. And I often like to see people tease their market size at the very front of their pitch. So right off the top, I've got that really interesting information to let me know how big this market is when I'm listening to their problem and solution. So it's not a long thing. It's just like, this is a $4 billion market. Then when I get to this market size side of the pitch, now I'm digging into, oh, this is how big that market is. Okay, and here's the total addressable market. Here's the market we're going after. And now this is a really great place when this would be the 12-minute pitch where you really roll up your sleeves and you get into it. Because this is the part where you actually have to peel back. Because I mean, if it's a $4 billion market, like, come on, you're not going to own 10% of that market within the first little bit, right? So really, we want to have a bit of common sense when we talk about the market size. So what's your best route to go to the market? So that's why I've got the next slide in, because I just feel like they transition so beautifully together when we talk about this big market, and then we talk about how we're actually going to get into that market. So your go-to-market slide. So this is where we really dig into, if you're dealing with grocery stores, you're dealing with brokers and distributors, if you're dealing with, this is where you start to really get into your market, and your go-to-market could be, if it's a specialty premium, there's, your market size could be a $4 billion premium grocery market. But we're actually talking about but there's only 200 premium grocery stores in Ontario, and that's our beachhead market. That's the first market we're going for. So this is where you get to, you tantalize them with this big market, but then we actually, we're not crazy. We really do know that this market is going to be a tough one to go after, and this is succinctly and smartly how we're going to get into it. So this is a good place if you actually already have, you're already on the market, you can talk about what's working. If you're oftentimes people are looking for investment when they're trying to get in, grow their market share. So you can talk a little bit about what's working and how you want to grow your market share. Are there channel partners that you're working with? This is a good opportunity for you to talk about them, especially if they're big names. I was just pitch coaching a company from Innovation Guelph the other day, and they've got NASA as a channel partner. So we want to show that off a little bit, and the Canadian Space Agency. So super cool. So we want to show that these are the things that this is how we're getting into the market. We're using big channel partners. And then if there's a next vertical, so oftentimes companies will come to me and they'll say, well, we actually have 2 revenue sources. We've really got 2 streams. And, I always say, focus on the big one that you're getting the most traction in. But this might be a place to say, and we also have this other vertical that we're working on. If you're in a 12-minute deck, you can do that. If you're in a 3- and 5-minute deck, you need to be super focused. So I wouldn't bring up another vertical at that point. Next is the competition and differentiation. So when we're talking about our market and then how we're going to get into that market, we also need to address the fact that there's probably people who are already doing what you're doing. So your competition. So essentially there's 2 really great ways to do a competition and differentiation slide. You can do a bit of an XY axis where you're choosing the 2 biggest differentiators. So price, quality, timing, efficiency, whatever you feel are the 2 biggest things that people are going to be looking for. You can XY axis this, and you want to make sure that your company is in the top right-hand corner. If you have more things, it's a more complex service or product, and you want to get into a little bit more of those details, this is the case where you'd put in a bit more of a table format. And, this is where we can have stuff like, we might, I was just looking at another Innovation Guelph company, and they're going for FDA approval. So who in their competition actually have American and Canadian approval for their devices in these markets. So that's something that we can differentiate on, but it's not the biggest one, but it's things that we want to start to bring forward. Then we get to the good stuff, which is how do you make money? This is my favorite slide as an angel investor. I always want to see how they're what are your margins? How are you pricing? What does that look like? Because to me, this really shows whether the founder has done their due diligence in their market and understands how they're going to make money and how they price things out. So just a little side note to all of you, this is an important slide to really show off your CEO chops, okay? Then we get into financial projections, which is more of, how do we say this? Fiction. So the revenue model is nonfiction, and your financial can be a little bit of fiction. We used to, when 5 years ago as an angel investor, we were looking at 5 years out of projections. COVID killed that. Now you can put financial projections together for about 3 years. But here's an important thing that I want you all to remember. That why I'm looking at financial projections as an angel investor is to see if I'm investing $25,000 into your company, when are they going to have the profit that they can either buy me out, or if they're going to go to a Series A, how much are they raising so that I can get bought out, right? So if you're pitching to angels, you want to really, you need to know that that's what they're looking for. And if you're pitching to a VC, I guess if you're pitching to a VC with financial projections, they're gonna pick them apart anyway. But so go high level, little that was a little side talk I had here. Okay, moving on. Now we get to the team, where we really want to showcase your relevant experience. So if you're in the food and drug industry, you might want to show like Pfizer, if you worked for Pfizer, or, you know, Johnson and Johnson, or like, you know, Dare. If there's a place where you've worked yeah, if you worked for Pfizer and you're starting a company that you know makes burger buns, the two don't align. But if you're doing something, so you want to make sure that you're showcasing your most relevant experience. And if you have brand equity in the companies that you worked for in the past on your CV, it's totally a good idea to put those brands on your deck. Just shows that, you know, you've been around. You know, I always think Johnson & Johnson's got an amazing training program. So when I see Johnson & Johnson on a med tech company, it means that they had excellent training. And so that's a tick in my box. So just like little things to think about that that are going through the investors' minds. Now we get to the big thing, which is your ask and your valuation. Now, I just want to reiterate again, this isn't a 12-minute pitch. You know, the financial projections, you might want to put a little bit of revenue and margins into a 3 or 5 minute pitch, but you are going high level on that, right? We're not digging down and talking about, you know, the different products you have and how each one of them are priced. You don't have time for that. So just high level. So I'm in the 12-minute pitch right now that I'm telling you about. And so now we're at that ask and the valuation. Now, if I had a penny for every time somebody asked me how to evaluate their company, I'd be investing in way more companies because I have more money to invest. But what I'd say to you is essentially your ask is you're asking for a 1-year runway. So you're not asking for a small amount of money to get you to be able to make payroll for the next month. Okay. What we're asking for and what we're giving up for it, which is equity in our company, is a large chunk of money that takes us from a profit revenue stance into a next level. That's the best investment that an investor can get into, right? So that's what we want to ask for. So then you're in this little game of cat and mouse, if you will, of, you know, if you're asking for $100,000 and your company is valuated at $1 million, you're giving 10% of your company, right? Just back of the napkin. So giving up 10% of your company for $100,000, you know, that's a tough decision. And I'm sure Mickey and all the brilliant people at Innovation Guelph, there's a couple of different things that you can do. You can take loans out. We've got BDC, there's grants, there's a whole bunch of things that you can look at. But if you are on this call with me right now and you're looking at doing an investor pitch, you really got to look at your valuation and what your valuation, like, do you have IP? Do you have customers? Do you have, you know, are you getting regular, a monthly recurring revenue coming in? All of that is sort of the art and science behind coming up with your valuation. And we've got some great mentors who can help you with that at Innovation Guelph to come up with those ideas. And so essentially you've got this valuation, which I would also say you kind of keep in your back pocket, but any good angel is going to do the math on whatever your ask is and how much you're willing to give up on your company. Now, some people just leave that off their slide altogether and say, I'm looking for $250,000 to enter the US market. And we leave off how much equity, because that can be negotiable. And then what that allows you to do is you can negotiate with different angels depending on, I mean, some angels might have awesome experience and have like their contacts of all the people that you need. And so, you know, you might give them a higher valuation on the money they're giving you because you also want them to be on your team. So I digress. The next thing that we roll into is your big finish, right? So this is your mic drop moment. Remember, we looked at the story arc. We built up our investment pitch to the very end. This is, yeah, your Obama mic drop. You essentially here is what you're trying to do is capture their attention. I feel like it's really important to summarize a couple of your biggest points. You know, we've got traction here. We've already got $250,000 in revenue on an annual basis. We've got strategic partners like NASA. You know, go back, remind that, and remind them of the like three or four of the best things that you said to them, just so it's back front of mind on them. And then I'd love to give them a little something at the end, something that's going to make them excited and want to ask you more questions at the end. Okay? Awesome. All right, next slide, please, Mickey. Oh, you know what, Mickey, I'm going to skip this. I'll send it around so everybody can watch it. This is my favorite pitch. I love this guy. It's actually old, and I haven't found anybody who's done it better. So Mickey and Jordana, if we can send out this pitch, I highly recommend that you watch it. But I do believe we're kind of getting close on time. So I'm going to jump into something else. If I've got time at the end, I'll walk you through it. So the other thing I just wanted to mention is a persuasive presentation. So, you know, you're typically in an investor pitch, but sometimes an investor pitch isn't exactly what you're looking for, right? You're doing sort of like a persuasive presentation. You know, the best way to put it is a TED Talk style. So just quickly, you know, it's a 3-act structure, right? Where we're trying to get people interested. We build it up, we take them, we plateau them and take them to that next level, and then we close it out. So that's essentially what's the problem, what's the solution, what we're going to, you know, what's the next level we're going to take it to. You always want to put your listeners in the center of your presentation so that the message is relatable. That's good for an investor pitch as well as a TED Talk style. We want to structure your talk like those of history's most powerful speakers. So what I mean by that is, and maybe you don't know this, but some of the best most powerful speakers started with the end of they start with the end. So they actually write their conclusion first. So try that. Different cadence styles. Like really one of the things I wanted to just get in front of you on this slide is, you know, showcase your personality. Every single one of you is different. Every one of you is passionate in your own way. So figure out what your style and your persona is when you are in that presentation seat, okay? We want to motivate our listeners by telling them this is what the status quo is. And this is a great way to end your pitch as well, because we've said like, this is where we are and this is where we want to go, right? And that's exactly what a TED Talk pitch is. Status quo, how we can make things change. Status quo, how we can make things better, right? So think about that. And then we, of course, use repetition, which I'm sure you've noticed is one of my main speaking styles. I repeat things over and over again so that people remember them. Next slide, please. So now we get into, can anybody read this? I don't know if you can. Just so you know, that's 12-point font. So anyone who tells you to put as many words on your slide deck as possible is wrong, okay? We are not professors teaching a class at the University of Guelph or Laurier or UW. You know, you are presenting your company. And so oftentimes less is more on your slide. Hit the next slide, please. So that's 40, next slide, 72 should be. 36, 72. Now we can read this, right? So think about, and you could even go bigger than that. I love big fonts, as you can probably tell from my pitches. So what I'm doing here is I'm showcasing the words that I'm using and putting something on the screen that you can attach to, and in a big enough font that you can read it. But once your brain has seen it, it's moving on and you're only listening to me, which is really what we want the investors to do. We don't want the investors reading your slide, because fun fact, you cannot read and listen at the same time. I have 2 teenagers. I can tell you there's no way it's possible. They tell me that it is, but it's not. So anyway, let's move on to that next slide. Another part of creating your slide deck. So we've talked a lot about the script, and now we've moved on to what the deck is going to look like. So we want to have big font. And then here's the rule of 3 again. We're back at it, the power of 3, create interesting slides. So looking at, I often like to see, so if we're talking about the problem and the solution slide, this is a great example. You know, you can make your slide page into 3, and each one is 1, 2, and 3 of the problems. And then when we bring our solution slide up, the solution attaches to each one of those problems and how you're solving it. So kind of looking at how can we make our slides stand out a little bit, We don't want to cram everything onto it. We want to make it simple and appealing to the eyes. Okay, next slide, please. Another important part of a great slide deck is these 7, 38, 55. These numbers matter because this is how you're being evaluated as a speaker. And when you're talking in front of, oh my goodness, investors, venture capitalists, this is a tough crowd. Even judges, if you're in like a 3-minute elevator pitch competition or a 5-minute pitch competition, judges are tough. They actually they are sharpening their knives under the table before you finish. So a great way to showcase your confidence and your ability is to practice your pitch over and over again. Just so you know, 55% of what you're being judged on, what you're all judging me on right now, is my body composure, right? On my nonverbal, my posture, my eye contact, all of those things. 38% is on my voice, how I go up and how I go down, and all the patterns that my voice creates when I'm talking to you. And actually 7% is on the content. So, these numbers are debatable, but if you learned anything today, what I want you to take away is if you even just spend 50% of your time writing your script and 50% of the time practicing your script, then you're going to be in a far better place than you currently are. Because most people I know spend all their time heads down writing, and then they get up to present and it feels unnatural. The more that you practice, the more natural it comes to you. Okay, great. Moving on. Oh, and this just pulls it all together, but you'll get these slides afterwards. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next part that we're talking about here is presentation, and we can send this along, a link to the Amy Cuddy. What I love about this is she really talks about how you prepare yourself to present with confidence. And so this idea is that most of us spend our time with our heads down. I mean, I usually, my scripts are on my phone, so I've got my head down reading my scripts. You want to be power posing, so you want to get big, right? We want to make sure that that our testosterone and our cortisol levels in our brain are up and in a great space. So we do this by being big and thinking big and feeling like all that good stuff. That's executive presence, and that's what we want to showcase when you go to see the sharks or the dragons, depending on who they might be. Next slide, please. So presentation is important. And I do believe one of the things that I often say to people is, look good, feel good, right? So professionally dressed. COVID changed that. I don't know how many of you are in your pajamas right now. If you are, more power to you. But I do think that it's important for you to, if you're asking for somebody for $250,000, would you walk into a bank in a t-shirt and a hoodie? No, you wear a suit. So when you're in front of investors, it's important for you to look like someone who is asking for money and who is going to spend that money wisely, for equity in the company. So, I'm all about, wearing your swag, but I highly recommend, and this is changing too. So call me old school if you want, but I think it's appropriate for you to be dressed professionally. It's a sign of respect for the people that you're talking to, and also it has the added benefit, it makes you feel good too. All right, next slide, please. And then we want to practice, practice, practice. I used to say this, but it actually came back to haunt me. Perfection is 50 practices away. And I made a joke in one of these pitches that if you practice 50 times and you screw up, I'll buy you a bottle of champagne. I don't know if it's the case, but I did hear from somebody, they were like, I practiced so much and it didn't come out. So, but anyway, I can definitely tell you, practicing is really important. You want your transitions to feel really strong. You don't want to be standing there sort of with that clicker, waiting for the next slide to go and then starting over again, ending, click, next, start over, right? Like you want it to feel really like you're sharing a conversation with them and it's very smooth. That's where I want you to get. Now, one of the things that really can harbor people, no matter how hard you practice, is if you get stage fright. So let's hit that next slide. And I'm just wondering how many people actually get stage fright. Actually, I can't even see your hands, but I'm going to assume many people, because when I do get to ask Oh, I can't wait to be back in a crowd of people again. But anyway, when I do ask this question in front of a crowd, almost everybody puts their hands up. So I'm going to give you 2 things to do if you can feel that adrenaline come up. The first thing is you can take your fist and you put it into the palm of your hand, and you're going to push really hard for 10 seconds. So what that is doing is it's making all of your muscles contract. And as we know, simple physics, whatever you contract needs to release. So as soon as you release your hands, your body has to release that pressure. So you're kind of joking with your body a little bit to say like, no, you need to be relaxed. And then of course, the other thing, and we're all sort of zenning out these days and learning how important meditation can be in our lives, taking 10 deep breaths slows down your heart rate. It, gives you a little bit of clarity in your brain. There's a reason why my Apple Watch tells me to do it 10 times a day. So, just doing that before you go on to a stage or get into a pitch presentation is going to set you up for success. Finally, last slide. All right, so basically what I want you to remember is, you have everything that you need to make and actually I'm just gonna check in, Jordana, I haven't checked in with you once. Oh my goodness, Jordana.
We haven't gotten any questions actually. So if you have questions, you can put them in the chat box now, but keep going, all good.
Okay. Is it because I was talking too fast? That's possible. It happens. I talk so fast. Okay, so if you have questions, come at me. I've got great answers, hopefully. So I think, are we gonna go to the Q&A? Oh, thank you, Mary Jane. I can see the chat. Nikki, do I have a little bit longer? Can I go a little bit longer?
For sure you can.
Okay.
So there's a half-hour Q&A. So if there's no Q, you can keep talking.
Okay, perfect. Okay, good.
Go for it.
So what I'd really love to do is share with all of you my favorite pitch, if that's okay. And thank you, Stacy. And I'll walk you through it. I was a sports anchor for a very brief period of time. I was not good at it, but I'm going to put my sports anchor hat on one time and do a little color commentary and walk you through a typical 10-minute pitch, if that works for you, unless the team wants me to go to questions.
We have one question if you wanted to touch on that one first or whatever works.
You know what? If there's only one question, I can deal with it in a minute. Do you mind, Mickey? Can I take over your screen?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. All right, everyone. You ready for this? It's going to be epic. Okay, here we go. Can everybody see this? Okay. Is it full screen or can you see my terrible desktop? How embarrassing. Okay, here we go. Now I'm going to talk and pause and talk over this, but this is pretty old, but this guy nails better than anybody all of the elements of a great pitch. So if you're ever struggling, here's your inspiration, people.
Instantly, anytime, anywhere.
Okay, hold up. So remember how I talked about how you want to grab them right off the top? Sit back, people. This is awesome.
My name is Victor Huang. I'm the CEO of Liquidity. We design products that make water safe to drink instantly, anytime, anywhere. To explain, let me introduce you to someone. This is E. coli. He's a nasty looking creature.
So what I love about this pitch is we're typically, the problem he's solving has to do with the cold. Usually we'll see, maybe people in developing countries that can't get access to clean water. No, he's going to the bacteria, and listen how he does it. I love this.
And if you drink him, he's even nastier. And it's not just E. coli. He's got a bunch of nasty buddies like Cryptosporidium and Giardia. Every day they get millions of people sick. 10,000 people will die today because of these guys.
Stats, right? So it's not just about bad little furry botulisms and stuff. He backs it up with a fact. And not only does he make it a big fact, he says today. So he makes it matter to us today. Important.
1 billion people on the planet cannot get dependably safe drinking water because of them.
There's our problem.
Now, why is this so hard? So here's a number to remember. 6 nines, 99.9999%. This is a commonly accepted standard for bacteria reduction in order to get safe drinking water.
So what I love about this is I saw this once. I will never forget this number. And look how simple this slide is. It's just got a little bad bacteria on it. and a number. That's all that's on the screen. So really inspirational to like help you think, you know, if you're struggling with how to do your problem, sometimes just skimming it back to the basics is exactly where you want to be.
It's what the EPA uses.
Hey, Melissa,
It's a very
can you click closed captions, please?
Oh, yes.
That would be great. Thanks.
Thank you for the reminder. There we go. Thank you. Apologies.
hard standard because it means that fewer than 1 out of 1 million bacteria can make it from the source of the water to your lips in order for you to stay safe. This is compounded in difficulty by the fact that you can't see this stuff. These germs are not visible to the naked eye.
So what I love about this is that how simple is that? It's a very, very simple problem. The invisible stuff that kills you. He set it up, and now, what a great story. Now we're going to move into the solutions.
It's the invisible stuff that kills you. You can't just take water that looks dirty and make it clear in order to be safe.
Always makes me thirsty.
Until now, the world has had to make a fundamental trade-off. On one hand, you had products that didn't work, and on the other hand, you had products that were.
Now, this is a great example of how we learn the rules and then we break them. So he's sort of bringing in another element here, which is a little bit about what the competition is dealing with.
Really hard to use. So common household products that use activated carbon, they don't get rid of the germs that actually harm you. Other methods like UV lights, pressurized systems, or chemicals like chlorine or iodine, they've got all sorts of drawbacks. They take electricity, they require pumping or sucking, they take a lot of time, or they don't taste very good. Liquidity's technology transcends the state of the art.
Look how beautiful this slide is. Doesn't it just make you want to drink water? So, I mean, what he did there was he used darker slides. And then when he introduced his brand, remember I talked to you about that Oprah aha moment? It goes, ah, and the white comes in and the beautiful, the water.
We are able to eliminate those trade-offs. For the first time, you can get instantly safe drinking water with no chemicals, no electricity, and no pumping. Now, why is this important?
Okay, so he set this up before as those were the big problems, and now he showcased very simply, these are their solutions.
Well, it means that we can combine effectiveness, remember 99.9999%, with convenience, something that's hassle-free, to create everyday use products. This is a huge deal because it means that we can.
So I love presenters that actually, you don't want to do too often, but if you can say something like, this is a big deal, or pay attention to what I'm about to say. I sometimes use this. I don't know if I said to you guys, I know I did. I said, if you learn one thing, remember this, right? This is a great presentation style because it gets people's attention.
And finally, take water from being a scarce and precious resource and make it into something that's ordinary and commonplace and universal. So we have the TechCrunch staff that was very kind to go up to.
So I wouldn't recommend this portion of it. I always fast forward through it. They basically went to Central Park, got water out of the well, and he drinks it live during his performance. These kinds of things, like this is in New York City, so whatever. But more like he's basically showing his product works, right? Remember I talked to you about eating your own dog food? Like you want to show that if you can use an example, I recommend case studies are really great, or if you have if you've got a customer testimonial, that could be something that you use. Ooh. And there we go.
In fact, it's so easy to use. My 6-year-old loves drinking from this. So how does this work? Well, geek out with me for just a little bit as I explain. So we're able to create a dense web of fibers that are amazingly thin. They're 1/600th the width of a human hair. We can take these fibers and put them into a membrane.
So why I love this so much is most people would spend 5 hours explaining this. What this presenter did so well is it really scraped back to this is really, he explains his product in almost 3 sentences. Like, it's just brilliant. So, why I want you to be inspired by this is just to keep iterating your script over and over again. Can I say it simpler? What's the one thing I want people to remember when I'm reading this slide? So look for those simplicities, yeah. Digress.
And then put that membrane into a cartridge, just like this one, which is what I just used in the bottle I just drank from. The way we make this is like a form of extreme 3D printing. We have hundreds of nozzles spinning down these fibers at the speed of sound. It's an amazingly precise, environmentally controlled process with scientific precision. You can think of it as mass production meets 3D printing on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
And when these fibers are deposited down, you get this, which is this dense mesh of fibers. And this is a cross-section view. You can see as the particles travel from the top to the bottom in this picture, the bacteria get stuck at the top. They can't make it through. They get stuck like fish trying to get through a fish net. So the bacteria stop, but the water flows. In fact, the water flows ridiculously fast. To bring this idea to life, we had to put together a dream team of some of the leading scientists, engineers, business people, and experts in the world.
So what was really interesting about this is he doesn't actually talk about his team per se. What he does is he just
These are veterans of some of the leading brands in the business. In fact, every single day, you probably drink water that was filtered by products that our team helped develop.
So remember how I was saying if you worked in an industry, he doesn't even tell us who the CMO is, who this chief financial officer. We don't know who's on this team, but what they've chosen to tell us, which is way more important, is that anything that we drink, his team that's building this company has probably been a part of it. That's pretty catchy, huh? So this guy breaks a ton of rules, which I love, but I just want to give you guys some ideas as you're getting your pitches together, just neat little things. And nerd out, like I watch pitches all the time online.
And there's serious science here. There's over 15 years of fundamental R&D from Stony Brook University, supported by the National Science Foundation. And boy, have we tested this. We've done countless tests. In fact, we published a test report on our website from a respected independent third-party laboratory. We're rolling out several different products. The first.
Okay, so then he gets into the products. I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm going to get into his market here.
Wellness and recreational markets, but in key states.
So this is their go-to-market strategy.
We're going to roll this out all over the world, but we're going to do it in key stages. So we've already started in the United States and Europe, where we're reaching out to the health and the wellness and the recreational markets. These are the same people that buy from Whole Foods or REI.
Hey, isn't that a huge
opportunity where we're simultaneously going after, which is the growing middle classes in the emerging markets, places like Brazil, China, India, Mexico. There are hundreds of millions of people with purchasing power, but still cannot get dependably safe drinking water. So a mother in Sao Paulo is concerned about her child's health, can take this water bottle and put it in their backpack when they go to school in the morning and be guaranteed that they're getting safe drinking water all day long.
So just a simple little story, no more than 3 sentences, but truly highlights an exceptional problem they're solving. So if you're struggling with your story, sometimes you can just put a little anecdote somewhere in the deck, right? Because I'm not going to forget about that Sam Paulo mom, right? Like it's going to stick in my head, maybe because I'm a mom and I associate with that. But for whatever reason,
once we scale up and are able to reduce manufacturing costs, our plan is to take this everywhere else. Bottom of the pyramid, rural villages. Our vision is to reach 1 billion people.
Okay, that's the mic drop moment, people. Remember I talked about that? Their goal is to reach 1 billion people. I mean, you don't just throw that thing out. Like you need to nail that, and he did it really well.
We're really excited here at TechCrunch Disrupt to announce that you can now purchase our naked filter water bottle.
Okay, so now he sells to everybody that's there. But hopefully that helped. It's my favorite pitch that I wanted to share with all of you. Hopefully it's helped inspire you as well. Okay, Jordana, you have any questions?
Yeah, we have some questions. So our first one that we'll circle back to is from Christy. And she's wondering if you can speak more to the difference between VCs versus angels in terms of your posture when presenting to them.
Posture. Oh, okay. Well, I think you should always have good posture, but maybe it's position in terms of positioning to them. So I would say, because that's what I'm going to go with. Okay, so so with an angel investor, you're typically looking at and Mickey, I don't like to use the term lone wolves, but these are often they have to have $1 million that they can lose, essentially is how the government puts it. You need to be an accredited investor. And so they tend to be organized where they're the big amounts they'll get into, or typically I see angels doing about 10,000 to 25,000. So it's a bit of a smaller pot, and you'll get a lot of angels to play in one pot, which is why we have angel networks. So one person will put their hand up and several others will come on board, and maybe that angel group will put $150,000 on the table for that investor. With a VC, it's completely different. Now, this space has gone a little bit gray in the last little bit, but I can tell you since in the last 2 months, I've had quite a few companies that have come to me and said, the venture capitalists say they're not ready for us yet. So in order to be ready for VC money, you need to have revenue. First of all, it's very rare for them to ever look at you if you're a seed idea. Those are the special ones. You might be a founder or part of a dream team, but other than that, you really need to show that you've got traction. You're solving a real problem. And the VCs tend to only give out big checks. Like most checks are seven letters, 7 numbers or more. That's really where they play. That's
I have a question. Sorry, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So my company, Black App, we're an SOS app plus a civic design. We crowdsource safety and we help improve the quality of life of the BIPOC community and LGBTQ community by aggregating reviews and mapping them so they can find the best in service and best in products that will treat them respectfully. Our value proposition is that, and I apologize, my figures are very much aligned with the states. So racism costs the American economy $1.5 trillion annually. However, the buying power of Black and Latino women is actually $3.5 trillion. So our company, Black App, can show corporations and institutions how to get that very vibrant space consumer, Black and Latino women as customers, because they are putting their safety and quality of life first. And our prime example of companies that are benefiting by doing this is Nike. So anyway, that's my company.
Okay.
So we were originally, I was talking to sorry. Yeah. Okay. So originally we were approaching companies to get VC money, and then we were at seed stage. But what I realized is that we had a service that we could charge companies for because we have a level of expertise and we have data scientists. So I pushed back on taking money, and I've been negotiating contracts with institutions and corporations, and now we're going for grant money. But I would like to speak to angels to see about getting some monies just to help us kind of get to market sooner with things that we're creating.
Okay. So I think that's a really good idea. I'm getting a little backlash on your mic.
Oh, let me put myself on mute.
For some reason I'm hearing myself twice there. Thank you. Okay, so you're looking at getting with some angels. Mickey, do you want to wave? Do you know Maureen? So there's a couple. So GTAN is the Golden Triangle Angel Network. Maureen, I didn't hear what your revenue currently is, but they do something called GTAN Raw, which is essentially you get in front of the angels. It's a quick way to get into the investment meeting if they like your pitch. So I would recommend GTAN Raw. There's also, or you can even just go, and Mickey's got all the contacts for you at GTAN as well to get in their investment meeting. Now they're done for the summer. Well, it is summer. They start back up in September. Boy, that happened quickly. So I would recommend that. I do think that, I'd love to work on your messaging a little bit. I think you're putting too much out there. I would skim it back a little bit in the sense that, really, truly, why are you building this? Because I heard a couple of different things here. The first thing I heard was about safety and quality of life for, mostly Black women. And then I heard you talking about big data, and then talking about how businesses can get those women. So you're kind of selling out your target market. So you want to be careful when you're using that kind of language, that we want to, we're truly enhancing it. And Maureen, I might be putting words in your mouth, so feel free to come back at me.
If I can maybe schedule an appointment with you, I think it might be better because I don't want to take up everybody's time, and I'll connect with Mickey and work that out. Thanks again.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
For sure, Maureen. Reach out. Okay. For sure.
Great.
We have a couple other questions in the chat, which we should probably get to. Jordan, did you want to jump on that one?
Yeah, for sure. So our next question is from Michael. So what would your suggestion be to coach companies that overvalue their company?
Well, I don't know, Michael, if you noticed, but I'm a pretty big straight shooter. So I just come right at them. So, it's not in your best interest to overvaluate yourself. If you do that, then nobody's going to want to buy. Like, this is a negotiation. And as an angel investor, I can tell you, oftentimes I'll say to a company, this is how much equity I'm looking for this amount of money. So how can we make this work? So, and angels will be that bold. So if you're coaching them, then you truly need to coach them to tell them you're too high and you're basically, yeah. I mean, I get why they do it. The higher the valuation, the less equity. Like, it's a little bit of a dance there. But at the end of the day, I think, as a coach, it's incumbent on you to tell them the hard facts. And I'm happy to do it for you. I don't mind being a hard fact girl.
Thanks. We have 2 questions from Mary Jane in the chat. What's the best way to get involved with these different angel networks? I know you talked about it a little bit. And then how much revenue do you need to approach VCs?
So for VCs, I think your sweet spot is you probably want to be making over $1 million. I've seen some companies go in at less, but they've got contracts signed and are in place that they are going to be scaling up, and those numbers are basically already there, right? So I do think you need to be profitable, and you need to be bringing in about $1 million. There's always special cases. As I said, some rules are broken, but you'd be in a good spot if you are at $1 million and scaling to 20. Like, VCs are not interested in playing in like a little small space where you're going to have, 10% of the market, and it's a 50, I don't even know, $5 million market. Like, they don't care. They want big markets, and they want to see this thing scale, right? So, I would check your industry, the market that you're in. How big can you actually grow? Are you adding new products, new SKUs? What does that look like? So all of those elements come into play. There's a lot on. But for you, I think most of the people here are in Southwestern Ontario that are on this call. So I would say, if you want to get involved, if you want to get involved as an angel to invest, the Golden Triangle Angel Net, so GTAN. If you're trying to get in front of them to get investment, I would register for GTAN Raw, which is a quick little, I think it's a 5-minute pitch. So we talked about that off the top. So you just really get your problem solution. I won't go back into that again. So you do the GTAN pitch, but often what happens from there is that there are 3 to 4. And I think, Mickey, you've been a judge. I've judged. So we're not there to invest. We're there to give people tips. So it's a really good way to hear from the angel investors and people in the industry of, what you're missing, what you're getting really well, and where the gaps are. And so then when you can, address that. Now you've got a relationship with the angels. So you can go back to them and say, I've, addressed the things that you were talking about. I'd love to pitch again. Or is there a way for me to get into the investment meeting? So typically the angel groups here will have, maybe about 4 or 5 companies that'll be brought forward to go to the investment meeting, and they choose 3. So it is pretty competitive.
Awesome. I think we're all caught up on questions. I'll just remind everybody that the presentation slides that Melissa used and a recording of our session will be sent out towards the end of the week, likely Thursday, but no later than Friday. So all of the videos that she showed and links will be included in that too. And Mickey's also mentioned in the chat that if you're a client of Innovation Guelph, you can reach out to Mickey and she can get you introduced to GTAN. And then she can also discuss your readiness and requirements as well.
Awesome. This has been super fun. Thanks, everyone.
Is there any last minute questions before we let everybody go with 7 minutes left? There's lots of people that have said thank you, and they love your energy, Melissa. So that's fantastic. So awesome. Thanks, Melissa. With no more questions, we will end a few minutes early. Just wanted to let everyone know that the feedback link is there. We do really appreciate it. We read every single comment. We love your ratings. We love your suggestions for other topics for Toolkit Tuesdays. And we would very much appreciate it if you could take 30 seconds of your time, maybe a minute of your time, and do that for us today. That would be great. If you need so clients of Innovation Guelph can actually work with Melissa if you want to work on your pitch and creating something. We are discussing setting up some workshops, and you can have some one-on-one time with her as well. Just send me an email. It's mickey.campo@innovationguelph.ca. All of that information will be coming to you through Jordan later on this week. And then we can talk then. So if you are putting that in the chat that you want to connect with her, please don't, because we won't necessarily capture all of that. Send me a quick email and we'll make sure that that happens. Okay, so have a wonderful Tuesday. Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you to all of our sponsors, to the ASL interpreters today. Thank you so much for being here and having a great session. Thanks so much also to Jordan. Have a wonderful afternoon.